Robots are coming, Optimus is coming, the world is going to change, but how and when and who can actually tell what's coming next? The analysts seem to intermittently have no idea and all the ideas. That's why I'm bringing on Jon Twigge, who is a channel regular, fan favorite, and I like him too, so it's a good mix. We're going to talk about all that and who knows, so much more. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah,
Nice to be back.
so great to have you back. I saw a post on X recently that made me think of you because it was your post. Optimus, sell or rent? A lot of talk about whether Tesla will sell Optimus to others or only rent it, while Optimus remains more capable than other bots, and the market is not saturated then. Surely, Tesla will command a large premium rental charge as it replaces expensive human labor. CERN Basher, friend of the show, has regularly talked about how huge this opportunity is, even when keeping the numbers safely low. And I do give him a hard time about that because, you know, uh, let's just pause there. With CERN, he one time put together a model saying, here's what I see for Optimus. Tell me what I got wrong. I want to publish this. And I said, you know what you got wrong? Your numbers are too low. And he said, I know. But when I put in what I think are the real numbers or anywhere close to the real numbers, it starts to look like we're consuming all the atoms in the universe with money. And that's fair because one time I ordered unlimited breadsticks at Olive Garden and we ran the risk of consuming all the atoms in the universe. It's just how it goes. What are your thoughts on what we've said so far?
Well, what a coincidence. I asked him something very similar. I said, have you put the real numbers into your spreadsheet? And he said, well, I've tried, but it breaks it. The numbers are so big. We're looking at absolutely huge numbers. But of course, I think what we have to recognize is that the speed that this happens is constrained by perhaps what we're going to talk about a little bit later, the whole supply chain. You've got to ramp up. And when you talk to Jeff, Elon has actually said that this will be the fastest ramp of any product ever. And of course, in the past, he's talked about the impact on how it literally changes the nature of the economy itself. But of course, we need to listen to Jeff Lutz talking about how difficult it is to ramp supply chains, and it will take time.
Well, let's look at this at the parts involved compared to a car. A car involves stamped steel that's welded together, typically. This doesn't have stamped parts. The plastic components can pop out of a plastic injection molder very, very quickly. The metal parts will all be cast in-house. They can control the speed of it, and they're very small. You could probably cast 10 bots worth of parts in any given mold. The motors, the actuators, those, you tell the supplier how many you need, and ideally they can ramp to build that many. If not, you build them in-house. I could see the chips becoming a constraint. If you wish to order an additional million or 10 million entire motherboards, AI4, AI5 configurations, that could be a bottleneck. The batteries are very, very small compared to a car. And all of this can be assembled into sub-assemblies, which go into the final. You could have anywhere from a day to a month of a particular sub-assembly ready to go, so it never becomes a bottleneck, which is what we see with castings that pile up outside. This machine's running, let's keep it running, because when it comes down, it can take some time to get back online. So your thoughts on the supply chain ramp would be what?
I completely agree with you. They are much simpler than cars. It's going to be much easier to ramp up to millions, maybe a bit more. The issue is going to come that maybe not with the number of atoms in the universe, but we're going to be talking several orders of magnitude ramping each year. So we're going to be literally challenging suppliers to produce numbers that they have never done before for anybody in any way, in any product. So we're talking new factories. We're not just talking, can you do 20% more? Or there might be some products where it's a washer, something simple, whatever bots are going to have in them, and they already produce hundreds of millions. Some things will be okay, but some of the components are going to be relatively new. And it really is a ramp and the coordination. But what we also know is Tesla's the master of that. So what struck me is that Optimus is going to transform the whole economy in a way that nothing has ever done before. If they sold them all, you're going to be giving benefits to all those other people, and you're actually going to be going through those problems of that supply chain yourself. Why not push all of the Tesla benefits right through the Optimus supply chain as far as possible, so that you can ramp that as effectively as possible, as you show Zengler's videos and how fast that semi factory is going up. Tesla could help suppliers that need to grow new factories and ramp in a way they've not done before in all sorts of ways. And of course, we also know that, I think Elon actually said, didn't he? They're not. Somebody asked him, maybe, Jeff, is it design locked? Well, no,
Yes.
because we're not just talking about the Optimus itself. We're talking about the machines that build Optimus and the rails that everything runs on. I can't remember which bit's referring to what, but it's a whole ecosystem of manufacturing, which means when they get all of that right, they'll be able to cookie cutter those factories to produce more Optimus in a way that nobody's ever done before. Because, of course, that will be similar to Unboxed, so that Optimus is producing Optimus in a way that we've not seen products before. So that is going to be really effective, so that the whole thing could be stamped out, as you were saying, parts before, but stamped out factories literally in different bits of the world to ramp in ways we've not seen before. But that is then going to challenge the rest of the supply chain to say, how do we grow up? So let's say that, let's make a number up, 30 or 40% of the labor of a product might be labor cost. Maybe it's 10 or 20 on labor, and but also some in energy. We're going to cut that cost by using Optimus robots. Why not cut that cost all the way through your supply chain and knock 20% off the price of an Optimus for the whole thing, all the components? You then got to say, well, it reminded me actually of optimizing software years ago. We use a thing called a profiler. It dips into the software, literally into the CPU, that says, what are you doing now? And it does it millions of times. And it tells you exactly what the software was doing at that time, which routine it was in. And you often get surprises as to where the bottlenecks are. You might have put one particular routine in, and it gets called millions of times. And it's not very efficient. So that gives you a huge cost. It's a bit like Sandy Munro taking apart a car and giving you a breakdown of all the costs of all the bits. Push that all the way through the supply chain and then say, well, what can we hit first to cut cost? Which operation in the whole of our supply chain costs the most money? How can we partner with our suppliers to cut costs all the way through the system? And of course, once you do that in software, if you take that routine from the top that's using 20% of the CPU up, you then find the rest seems to expand percentage-wise, and then you then spot the next issue. Might be that the next issue in terms of total cost is energy. Well, that's funny, isn't it? Because Tesla's got megapacks. They could help factories with suppliers and put megapacks in to reduce their energy costs. Because this is going to be the fastest growing and biggest scaling and biggest numbers ever for a product in the world. So every percentage we can knock off of energy or labor or anything all the way through that process is going to save the world, literally save the world cost. It reminds me of a guy that talks Bitcoin stuff, Jeff Booth, who was a serial entrepreneur in IT. And he talks about how the cost of technology goes to zero. It's inherently deflationary. And the example he always uses is a calculator. When I was at school, you'd go to WH Smith's, the local retailer, and buy a calculator for £10. And if you were lucky, you'd get one with fancy functions in it, all these mathematical things. But of course, now you get it in your phone. You don't pay extra for the calculator. Technology moves to zero, and in the long term, we'll find the same with Optimus, that the whole supply chain and everything will move towards the physical cost of the bot and not much more. Plus, rental profit for Tesla.
Calculators are a great example because they're free. If you go to any trade show, they will give them out to you as readily as a pen. That is how cheap they've become. And these are complicated devices. These are unimaginable technology from even 100 years ago. Not unimaginable 100 years ago, but unavailable. They didn't exist in this form 100 years ago. That no part of it. The solar panel is free. The chip is free. The manufacturing has gotten to the point where it is basically free. If you wish to purchase a calculator, you're going to spend more on shipping than it took to manufacture it. And those are all things. The other thing Grok can do, or whatever we're going to call the AI that's actually running in the background on an Optimus, is what you just said. Is your job is to make this widget, and it will be able to suggest to you the ways in which you can optimize the entire process. You could get enough savings out of that optimization to pay for the bot. Now, a human can do that too, but a industrial pre-programmed machine on rails, so to speak, can't and won't. It's not meant for that. So those are all big factors.
One of the things you just read in the post I put was that while there's sufficient demand, Tesla will get a premium. They'll be able to rent bots out for a lot, but they'll be making them really cheaply. So they can provide them into their supply chain at a price that other people can't do. So they've also got that extra margin built into the supply chain until the whole thing becomes commoditized. It may be 30, 40 years. So Tesla has got an inherent advantage over almost everybody else by having the whole vertical integration. Vertical integration normally means doing it yourself, but they will become almost much closer to all of their suppliers.
One thing that we have seen Tesla do, and Amazon's done it as well, I'm sure other companies have, I think Walmart does it as well, is when they've got a supplier and they say, look, we really need you to cut 5-10% out. They say, we can't, we're optimized as much as we can. They say, can we send you some engineers? Can we fix your process for you at no cost? At the only cost being, give us the discount when it becomes available. And we are seeing that. So the idea that Tesla would send Optimus to work in supplier factories is not crazy at all. It's only unprecedented in that the worker doesn't have flesh. But maybe with an upgrade, it will start collecting human flesh. I hope not. That's more of a Skynet thing. We won't get into that today. But you're right. You're right about the. Go ahead.
At $20,000 per bot, if they put 100 into a small supplier, that's nothing to Tesla. But it might help that supplier cut their costs in half.
Yes. So we are going to have, this is going to be a multi-part series. In part 2, we will be talking about the debate of how many can they afford to keep in-house with some math behind it. But we're not there yet. I do want to hear all your guys' thoughts in the comments, of course, because this is a very big topic and we've got a bunch to cover. So looking at this, you're saying, should Tesla rent? Not much, not yet. Should Tesla sell? Not much. In a recent earnings call, Elon said it'll be a difficult path, but there is a way for Tesla to be worth more than the next 5 largest companies, and that they will scale Optimus production between 5 and 10 times per year, faster than any other product in history. And I'll tell you the reason I think that projections beyond the most conservative numbers aren't helpful. The reason we have to keep the numbers super conservative is because we're talking about how many ice cubes can you make? And the answer starts to be, well, we're going to need more water. We're going to need deeper wells. And when you start using the bigger numbers on Optimus, you have to start looking at societal shifts. You start looking at things that are so big, so far beyond the scope of just can I get the parts and make them? If you look at wartime efforts, if you look at which was it, the B-12 bomber, I think, the B-52, I don't remember which one now, the Flying Fortress, that one. I had an opportunity to see one on the inside. It's much smaller than you might realize. It is a pretty crazy machine. And so, of course, I go home and I look up who manufactured it. And the answer was 4 different companies manufactured it entirely independently from one another, because we've got one product and no one can build the number we need. I could see 10 companies providing the actuators. How many can you spool up at this price? Well, I can get you, 200,000. We'll take them. And I could see the supply chain getting wider in that regard. Not necessarily something Tesla would need to or want to bring in-house initially. But every $50 you can trim off of something that you sell 1 million of is $500 million over 10 years. I don't know how, I haven't seen your bank statements, but I'm assuming $500 million sounds as large to you as it does to me. So there are a lot of things there. How long could they sustain that growth? Could be many years. It'll mean huge and constant growth across an extensive supply chain around the world. This is what we just talked about. And Optimus will break the relationship between human labor and the size of the economy, perhaps even challenging the nature of money itself. That sounds like we might get into that in part 3, because the question always comes up about, once all the jobs are gone, who pays for the work and how? And that's almost a philosophical question, but one I think we'll have time to address before the series ends. Before we sign off for today and get on to part 2, where we will discuss the financials of, can Tesla actually afford to keep them in-house, and what does the path look like? Is there anything you wanted to wrap up on this first segment?
You were talking about multiple suppliers. It's quite possible that Tesla will actually build actuators themselves to build the die, the cookie cutter, and then give that away to suppliers, anybody that wants to make them, because they can actually help everybody make them more effectively, I would guess.
And that's not unusual for Tesla. We've seen them do it with a number of their patents, but we've also seen the Model Y rear brake light or tail light, the big wide one, when it was originally designed, was in 3 parts, and Franz hated it. It looks terrible. Can't we just have a single piece? And the answer is no. Nobody has an injection mold large enough for plastics to give you a 5.5-foot wide tail light. So Tesla purchased one for every continent and gave it to the suppliers. There. Now you've got the machine. Build me my brake light, tail light.
Yeah, just the same as the Gigacast. It's like they changed the rules.
Everyone's playing catch up. Some are playing it more effectively, but what are you going to do? Guys, this post that we are reading is in the description below. Please check it out. See what Jon Twigge is up to over there on X. We will be back with a part 2. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow or the next day. And everybody else, like, subscribe, do the thing you do. Stay tuned. Stay juicy. I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots. Oh, how fortuitous was that slogan on the Flippity Flop.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.